Well, good morning again. It's always interesting to see how many people file in from the time that we do the call to worship to the time that I actually get up here to preach. It looks like a completely different congregation. The heart of worship. You know, this is a subject that causes a lot of controversy in church. I have seen churches. There's Nong. Hi. It's been a long time. I have seen churches split over this. I've seen a lot of damage done from what we call the heart of worship. And, you know, that song that Sebastian ended with there was the product of an argument about worship in a church. The writer of that song, he tells the story about how his congregation, his praise team, they just kept arguing, and eventually he took all of the music away. And they went for weeks where it was just their voices and singing because there were people that argued about this and that and another. So this morning we're going to look at John chapter 4. We're going to be at verse 19. I would love to read the whole chapter, this whole discourse that Jesus has with a woman at the well. It's a pretty amazing discourse, and especially whenever you read back further where he tells his disciples, I have to go that direction. Basically, he's telling them, I have an appointment that you don't know about of someone that I've got to talk to. But let's look at John chapter 4. If you will, stand with me this morning as we read the gospel. Now, there's been a lot that has happened up to this point. We're just going to pick up on these last 7 verses here. This is after Jesus has come to the well and he has begun speaking with this woman who has, we'll talk about it here in just a minute, but this is where we find ourselves. Verse 19, and we can all read together if we'd like. It says, Sir, the woman replied, I see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews say that the place to worship is in Jerusalem. Jesus told her, Believe me, woman, an hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know because salvation is from the Jews. But an hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Yes, the Father wants such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. The woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Jesus told her, I, the one speaking to you, am he. All right, please say hi to your neighbor and be seated. I want you to imagine the scene of this day. Jesus has been traveling. He's tired. He's thirsty. He's hot. And he decides that he's going to go to Jacob's well one day at noontime and sit there. And along comes this Samaritan woman who, if you know anything about her history, if you know about her background, she is a woman that is burdened with shame. She's a woman that has been avoiding the crowds. Now tell me this, in 100-degree weather, if you had to go draw water, when would you go draw water? In the morning. You would go in the morning when it's cool, when there's still shade. You wouldn't go at the high point of noon when it's hot. This woman goes at the point of noon because she is avoiding other people. She's a woman with a background. She is the last person that you would imagine or anyone would expect for Jesus to receive, for Jesus to give her, for her to receive a revelation about worship. Because her background is so sordid. Her past is so tainted. She's got history, guys. She's got some nasty, nasty history. But yet Jesus chooses her to deliver one of the most profound teachings that are found in the New Testament about what worship truly is. And we see that there's this conversation that starts about water, but it ends about worship. And she brings up that there's this long-standing debate between Jews and the Samaritans. The Jews, they worshiped in Jerusalem. The Samaritans, they worshiped at Mount Gerizim. It was a mountain that they had deemed to be special. They had deemed that place to be holy. And Jesus says, well, the Jews, they worship in Jerusalem. But she brings up this debate. She wants to know, well, which mountain is the right mountain for me to go to? Which mountain is the right place for me to worship? What's the right location, Jesus? And her question is a question that is just an echo of this debate that has been going on for years and years between the Jews and the Samaritans. There were questions about geography, and there were questions about traditions, and there were questions about the right rituals that follow worship. But Jesus, he takes this whole conversation and he turns it upside down. And he tells her, he says, lady, it's not about a mountain in Samaria. It's not about a temple in Jerusalem. He says to her, he says, true worship is not bound by a place. True worship, it's not bound by a system. It's not bound by a style. Worship is not about where you stand when you worship, but it's about how your heart bows when you worship. And here's the radical truth. The first thing that I want to tell you this morning is that worship isn't just a song set or a Sunday morning mood. No, worship, it's our response to God's revelation of himself. In John chapter 4, we see here, Jesus says, I that am speaking to you am he. In Jesus, he's not describing a style of worship, but a spiritual reality that changes everything about how that lady approaches the Lord. In church, this hits close to home for us, I hope. I know that it does for me. Because I've seen the arguments in church about what worship is. Well, worship, it's not the fast songs, that's the slow songs. That's the type of mentality that I grew up in. That worship is just about music. But so often we've reduced this whole idea of worship to the 20 minutes that Sebastian does up here before I come up to preach. And worship is so much more than that. So much more than that. It's not just a playlist that Sebastian sends out to the worship team. It's not just about the songs that we like that make us feel good whenever we stand in the presence of the Lord. It's much deeper than that. And Jesus pulls the conversation deeper when he's talking to this lady. Worship, it's not about the songs. It's not about the instruments. It's not even the style that we prefer. I'm a musician. I like all kinds of styles. I love heavy metal. But I don't think that any of you all are going to worship with me in heavy metal. You will? But I also love what we did this morning. I love worship where the ink is barely dry on the paper and it's so new. But I love the worship that's rooted over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in a hymnal. And we turn to that. Worship is not about a style. Worship is about spirit and truth. It's about a living relationship with God when He reveals Himself to us. Worship is not something that we even attend, but it's a posture that we assume before God in our daily life. Now, if we only worship whenever the band plays or when the music starts, we're not worshipers at that point. We are consumers. And I want you to know that worship is about the Father. It's not about us. Jesus says here, He says, true worshipers will worship the Father. At the core, worship is not about what we get out of it. It's about what we give God. What we give God. The Samaritan woman, she said, I want to know where worship should happen. And Jesus, He takes that conversation and He redirects her. And He says this, He says, it's not about where worship should happen. It's about who worship is for. The location doesn't matter. But the object of your worship, that's what matters. And so often we slip into this way of thinking that worship is a product. And it's easy to think that because we've got a whole worship industry, worship music industry. And guys, I'm telling you, this is hard this morning because I'm a musician. I love worship music. If you come on Wednesday nights, you know I love worship music. I don't get excited about much. I don't get hot and sweaty ever until it's time to worship. I love worship music. I love the act of what we do here. But worship is not about, did the music move me? It's not about, did the service meet my needs? It's not about that. It's not about, was my experience at worship a good one? Will it keep me wanting to come back? Our worship is not like a Yelp review. Okay? It's funny. Can I pick on you for a minute, Wyatt? Every meal that we eat, whether it's McDonald's or a nice restaurant, Wyatt, he takes a bite. I taste the salt and it's chased by the sweetness and he just goes on and on and on. He has a comment about what we eat, about everything. And so often, that's all I'm going to say, okay? So often, that's what we do about worship. We come to church and we think that the worship requires our commentary. We think that unless we put our stamp of approval on it, that God is not going to enjoy the worship. And I want you to know this morning that God is not auditioning for our approval. We are worshipers who are bowing before His throne. True worship, it doesn't start with our preferences. It has nothing to do with that. It starts with His presence. That's where worship starts. In verse 23 here, Jesus says the word worship. And I talked about this in the call to worship this morning, but that's a Greek word. It's proskuneo. And that word, I love this word. This may be one of my favorite words of the Greek New Testament because that word, it means to kiss. Like a dog licks the hand of its master in adoration and awe. Our lives, our worship are the same. So when my little dog Oakley runs up to me whenever I come home and she wants to lick all over me, that is an expression of worship of her master. I'm not calling you dogs, but our expression of gratitude and excitement and want to be with the Father is proskuneo in your life. And that is the worship that Jesus is talking about. One who will prostrate themselves in homage to the Lord. Have you ever seen your little animal that they'll roll over on their back? You're all powerful, Master. That little dog that licks my hand, I didn't like her for the first year and a half we had her. I'd fight for her now. She has won my heart over. But she licks my hand like she's worshiping. And when our motives for worship shift from seeking God to seeking an experience in worship, that creates a problem, because what that is that's idolatry in disguise. We stop giving God glory and we start chasing feelings for ourselves. That's a problem. And all of this should cause some close self-examination. Why do we come into this place week after week? Why are we coming? Are we coming to be entertained, or are we here to exalt Him? Are we coming to get something out of it, or to give God what is due to Him? If worship takes the spotlight and points it on us, it's not worship, it's self-indulgence. So worship, it's not measured by how much you enjoy it, but by how much you exalt Him in it. That's worship. The fourth thing this morning is that worship is Spirit-empowered, not self-manufactured. Jesus says they must worship in spirit. Worship, it's not something that we manufacture with lights or with ambience or not the atmosphere. It's not the music. Worship, it's something that only the Spirit empowers. Without the Spirit, worship becomes just an empty ritual, is all it is. It's a hollow act that's dressed up to look alive. But inside, it's not alive. The fifth thing this morning is that the Spirit is not an accessory to worship. He's the one who makes worship possible. You can come, you can sing, you can do whatever, you can go through whatever stances you want, you can do whatever postures you want. If the Spirit doesn't lead you, it's not worship. Because the Spirit awakens our hearts. The Spirit, He convicts our spirits. He lifts our eyes to Jesus. And He reminds us, you are now standing in front of a holy God. The Spirit has to be involved in worship. We can't stir ourselves into worship. We have to surrender ourselves to the Spirit who stirs us. And I want you to please hear my heart this morning. Hear my heart. Worship is not confined to just music. And I think that we fall into that trap so often, thinking about worship as music. Worship includes music. It certainly does. But it's so much bigger than that. It's how we live. It's how we bow our hearts. It's how we yield to the Spirit. Singing is an expression of worship, yes. But Spirit-led worship, that's a lifestyle. It's not just a song. Spirit-led worship is a lifestyle. So real worship, it's not measured by the volume. It's not measured by the tempo. It's not measured by the emotion that comes forth from what we do. But worship, real worship, is measured by the Spirit's work within us. You see, the Spirit empowers not just our voices on Sunday, but He also empowers our obedience on Monday. It's not just a Sunday act. In church, I have found that without the Spirit, even the most sincere rituals become empty. But with the Spirit, even the simplest act of obedience becomes worship. It doesn't matter whether you're serving people rice at the window, whether you're changing diapers in the nursery, whether you're teaching in one of the children's classes. The simplest act of obedience done in response to who He is becomes a divine act of worship. Now, you can be a leader standing on the platform and have the wrong attitude, the wrong heart, and you can lead worship, you can lead preaching, you can lead us in prayer, and that will be dead worship. If the Spirit is not behind what's going on, without the Spirit, whatever you're doing becomes empty. You see, when the Spirit fills us, worship is no longer an event. Like I said, it's that lifestyle. And I want you to ask yourself this morning, am I guilty of trying to manufacture worship through feelings? Are we guilty of trying to manufacture worship through routines? Or are we depending upon the Spirit to make our whole life as a living sacrifice before God? Worship is anchored in truth, not trends. Jesus says this, He says they must worship in spirit and in truth. Jesus, He reminds us that worship is not only Spirit empowered, but it's truth governed also. The Spirit lifts us, but the truth grounds us. Keeps us stable. To worship in truth means that we approach God as He revealed Himself, not as we imagine Him to be. You see, so many people think that they know what God is like. Well, a loving God wouldn't do that, but they've never read the book. They've never. I'm working on a car right now. I'm not. My neighbor's working on a car and he's teaching me a little bit. But you can never know what's under the hood you'll never know the power of the motor. You'll never know how that motor is put together. You'll never know what's driving the vehicle if you never pop the hood and look. And so many people, they want to worship God, but they've never dug in to the truth revealed about God here. So worship is anchored in truth. To worship in truth means we approach God as He revealed Himself, not as we imagine Him to be. So worship, it's shaped by Scripture. It's centered on the gospel. And it's directed toward Christ. You know how many trends over the last 30 years I've seen come and go in Christianity and in worship? I've been to churches where Everyone had a police whistle, and they were whistling to create excitement. I've seen beach balls go across the congregation, because we're creating excitement. I've seen so many things. So many things. Trends, they come and they go. Like hairstyle. Well, some hairstyles never go away. The mullet is back with fierce intensity. And I love the mullet. I had a mullet. Maybe I will have another one. I don't know. Kara, can I have a mullet? She says no. Trends come and go. Styles, they change over time. But you know what? Truth is timeless. It never changes. It keeps our worship from being reduced to just emotional spikes. And when our worship is anchored in truth, it's more than an experience. It's a response to who God really is. A response to who He is. It keeps us from chasing feelings, and that's what we see so often now. People are chasing feelings. They're chasing the next high in worship. They want that feeling. They want those endorphins to pump them up and to make them happy. But when it's anchored in truth, it tethers our heart to the reality of the Father, the reality of the Son, the reality of the Spirit. In truth, it safeguards not only our public worship, but also our daily worship. Now look at this. Whenever we have truth, it means whenever we worship in truth, it means that our obedience, our prayer, our faithfulness, it's just as much worship as the songs that we sing on Sunday. Because they're all aligned with God's revealed will. So worship that's built on trends, it fades away, but worship that's built on truth, it endures. It stays. It's there for the long haul. And Haram, if you'll come back. There's a lot of concern about wildfire in church. What do you mean by that, Pastor Paul? If you've never been in that background, it's hard to explain, but wildfire, people who are just, I don't know the right way to explain it without being ugly. I don't want to be ugly. But I want you to know that you can risk the wildfire, and you may have it. Or if you try to remove the Spirit from that, your worship will be nothing but a corpse without the Spirit. God is not looking for perfect voices, but He's looking for hearts that are aligned in truth. So what I want to ask you this morning is, do we know the God that we claim to worship? Do we know the God that we claim to worship? Or have we settled for worshiping the feeling that we get from worship? Have we settled for the experience of worship rather than the God that we came to worship? And I want to ask you another question this morning. I want to tell you, Jesus says this. He says, the Father is looking for worshipers. And my question to you is, will He find one in you this morning? Will He find a worshiper in you? Not someone who's chasing a feeling, not someone who's grading the service, not someone who's writing a review of how poorly the preacher preached, or, man, they hit a wrong note. Not someone who's content with the routine that we go through, but a true worshiper. Will He find one in you? God's looking for worshipers, one whose life bows before Him in spirit and truth. You see, this Samaritan woman that we started talking about this morning, she came to the well that day to satisfy her thirst. But she left with something far, far greater than what she came expecting. She encountered a living God, and her life was never the same. It's never the same. And I want you to know this morning, church, that that's what worship does. It changes us. It will revolutionize your walk with God. It transforms us and it redirects us away from ourself, and it puts the focus back on Him. God's not looking for people who can sing the loudest, who can sing on key. He's not looking for people that know the most songs, or people even who prefer the proper style of worship. But He's looking for you and I. He's looking for people that will bow their hearts before Him. People who will be aligned with the truth. People who will be filled with the Spirit. And He's seeking people that will say, "Here I am, Lord. Here I am. My life, it's yours. Everything that I've got, it's yours." So I want to leave this with you this morning. When God looks at your heart this morning, does He find a worshiper, or does He just find an attender? There's a difference. Does He find someone who consumes at the altar of worship, or someone who adores? The Father is seeking worshipers, and I want all of us to be found among the worshipers. Amen? Bow your heads with me for just a moment.